Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan, joined by my co-host, Julio Vela. What's going on, my man?
Hey, anytime I'm with a couple regulars, I'm having a good day.
That's right. We got some of our regulars on the program tonight. We welcome back Damon Parrish.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Good to have you back.
I'm glad to be back. I am glad to be back.
I love it when you're back.
It's fun times indeed.
I love it. Big D's in the house.
That's right. And we have Paul Kennedy returning to the show. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Get the band back together.
Little PK.
That's right. That's right. We're gonna catch you guys up on all the big criminal justice topics this week. There's a lot going on to talk about. We'll take your phone calls starting around 8:30. 713-807-1794 is the number. As always, got Twitter up, so if you want to hit us up on there, at HCCLA_TV, jump into this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, because it's going to be a good one tonight. Let's just jump right into it, man, because today, you guys know I've been in trial for the last month.
Yeah,
the trial that just won't end. But I got my emails. We do have internet connectivity in the courthouses, and so, during the breaks, I'm catching up on some of the emails, and I see some chatter about pretrial diversion programs, certain judges denying pretrial intervention contracts for DWIs. I think I saw another report that another judge is now going to deny pretrial interventions on felony possession of controlled substance cases. This is on the heels of last week's announcement of the non-prosecution, or I guess it's technically a non-prosecution, although there's this expansion of the First Chance Act to basically not prosecute anything under 4 ounces of marijuana. Of course, we saw the backlash with what Brett Liggins said, that we're going to be a sanctuary county for dope smokers. But guys, this just seems, the judges that are doing this, it's a clear retaliation against Kim Ogg, in my mind, it feels like. And Damon, I know you had participated on, I think, the committee on pretrial interventions as a defense bar representative.
Correct.
I'm curious to get your take on this, because you've been in the thick of the discussions on everything, and now all hell's breaking loose, to say the least.
So what this is District Attorney Ogg is wanting to create a more community-based programs for pretrial intervention.
Right.
And to say what that is first, a pretrial intervention is a contract between a defendant and the district attorney's office. Really, it bypasses the judges altogether, except for the way we do it in Harris County, they have to have a long reset. And the result of this intervention, which is allowed by the Code of Criminal Procedure, this isn't a new thing. This is specifically allowed by Texas law, is you go on a type of probation, you do your community service, you do whatever is required of you. If you're successful, the case results in dismissal, and you can get your record clear. And that's great.
Yeah.
And so previous administrations have had their own form of pretrial interventions. Some have been great, some have been a deferred in disguise, some have been used to actually oppress people more, some have not been. And so what Kim Ogg's trying to do is, hey, you know what, let's talk to the community. And so the committee I was with wasn't just lawyers. It was actually people from the community that have no interaction with criminal justice. So we spent a good while just explaining what a pretrial intervention is. Let's talk to the community. And of course have DA representative and defense bar representative, and let's see what we can fashion to be a workable pretrial intervention programs for the community.
So in previous times, in pretrial intervention, in this contract with the district attorney, an individual would not plead guilty, but they would make an admission of guilt. So they'd write a confession letter,
correct,
so to say. And then they would turn this packet in, or this confession letter, along with supporting materials, proof of work, proof of grades, proof of clean drug tests, proof of community service, a variety of things. And then this application would either get approved or denied. If you got approved, you would enter into the pretrial diversion program or intervention program. If you do everything right, your case gets dismissed, you can expunge it. If you're denied, then that individual now has a confession letter out there.
Correct.
And that's a big problem. And it was a risk, particularly in assault family member cases.
Well, and back up, the confession letter is a problem because you don't get the protections of Rule of Evidence 410.
Which
you
is
specifically waive that when you enter it, when you fill out this application to be part of the pretrial diversion program, which is really, I mean, it put lawyers in a bind because you're now advising your client potentially to waive their right to keep settlement negotiations, which is in essence what a pretrial diversion is.
Right.
You're advising them to waive their right to keep that evidence out, and it's, as a lawyer, I mean, you're faced with that conundrum of like, you know, you get a pretrial diversion, but am I committing malpractice by waiving this?
It's not just that, Jimmy. That really comes into play when you have a case that you don't believe your client did it. I mean, let's face it, pretrial interventions aren't given to people with a litany, a huge criminal history. We're talking about first-time offenders, usually for a misdemeanor offense, possession of marijuana, assault family member, maybe a theft, something like that. So the bulk of pretrial interventions are misdemeanor cases, and they are almost always, I have never seen one for a non-first-timer. And it's of something where there's not a substantial amount of damage to another person, you know, not a murder or an ag robbery and things like that. So you can have a situation as a lawyer and a defendant where you're like, I didn't do it. Like, I didn't do it. I didn't steal this property. They said I did, but I didn't steal it. I wasn't there. I didn't do it. But at the same time, this person doesn't want a risk trial. They don't want a conviction because it's really important for them not to have a conviction. So they are forced to then make an admission of guilt and accept responsibility and move forward. It's those situations, separate from the ones where they clearly did do it, and that's not an issue, that the admission of guilt becomes problematic. And that's one of the things we discussed, that can we do the pretrial without the admission of guilt? Can we do it without? And that's going to be up to Kim Ogg. Nothing was laid out as finality, but it was the community brought to attention that in order for you to really accept responsibility, you have to admit guilt. If you did it, you have to accept responsibility. And the district attorney brought out that if you didn't do it, well, just go to trial.
Right.
Which is an easy thing for lawyers to say.
If you're white,
I'm
sorry. I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, and David makes a very good point there.
So true.
Pretrial diversion's designed so that somebody can come in and keep their record clean, so they don't have to suffer the consequences of, convictions that, prosecutors don't necessarily think about. What's the effect of a conviction for possession of marijuana or assault family violence? And you've got, and clients who are innocent tend to be the most nervous clients that you've got.
Absolutely.
And what they're looking for is any way to get out of this thing. And it puts us in a bind because, if you've got a client that's innocent, there's only one acceptable outcome in the case.
Absolutely.
And so now, in essence, you've got somebody accepting responsibility for something they didn't do. And so, the entire pretrial diversion is based on a lie.
It's a real big problem. And they say, well, why doesn't your client just apply for the pretrial intervention? I said, and you look at him and say, because if he were to write a confession letter, it would be a lie. And we're not in the business of filing false documents to anyone or representing anything that's a lie. And then that in turn prohibits them from applying for these programs. And what happened to the days of, instead of saying, I had it today, well, it was a trespass. Some 17-year-old and 3 or 4 other juveniles trespassed onto a home that was being built. And I'd never been arrested before or anything like that. And I went to the prosecutor and I said, can we just do something? How about a class, 12 hours of community service and nollie this thing? And she looked at me and said, well, how about a pretrial intervention? And I said, my guy, 17, he's going to have to be saddled with the supervision costs of $40 a month, an ID card at $10, and a drug test at $12.50 or $10, and plus reporting every month, finding transportation to and from the probation office. And I looked at her, and she just didn't get it. The idea that when you put someone on a pretrial intervention, not only do they have to confess the crime of something they may or may not have done, but also all the things that come with it.
Right.
Well, this is just an extension. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the guilty plea problem. And Jed Rakoff, the federal judge up in New York, he's been a huge advocate of this massive problem we have in the country of people pleading guilty because they're scared of the trial tax. They're scared of getting sentenced to, just an inordinate amount of time if they lose. And a lot of people will come up to criminal defense lawyers and they'll say, how do you do it? It must be tough to defend guilty people. And my response to that is, actually, it's not that tough. It's not that tough to defend guilty people. When you know your client's guilty and they've admitted it to you, it's honestly not that tough because your whole role then is mitigation. Mm-hmm. You know you're fighting for mitigation. The tough ones is when they've accused your client and you know they're innocent because it's all on you.
Right.
At that point, you know your client's innocent. You have, you have this belief and this conviction inside you that they're innocent. And those are the tough cases to represent people on. That's the hardest part of criminal defense. Not representing somebody you know is guilty. Because, look, if you know somebody's guilty and you manage to get them a pretrial diversion, you're like, dude, I won.
Yeah, don't mess this up.
Right, exactly.
Don't mess this up.
I mean, but again, the problem is an innocent person. And what Judge Rakoff was talking about on that guilty plea project, what happens in the federal system a lot is you see prosecutors overcharging cases, charging mandatory minimums, going for everything they can, piling on. In a case where the defendant believes, well, I didn't do anything wrong, but they're looking at a 30-year sentence if they get convicted because there's no probation in the federal system. Mm-hmm. And they're going to do 85% of what they get.
That's the entire life.
Exactly.
Yes,
and so
yes,
if the prosecutor comes to you and says, we're going to cut a deal and you can get no more than 5 years and we'll reduce your sentence if you cooperate with us and everything else, it puts the defendant in a real bind.
In Harris County, we see that it's just a simple numbers game.
Yeah.
We have guys, we all have clients who are charged with 25 years to life, mm-hmm. and it's weird because we all have had clients where they'll say, on this case, I'm going to trial. Like I pled in the rest of them, those I pled to, I did it, but on this one, I'm going to trial because I didn't do it. And you're like, let's go, right? And then you have to tell them, hey, listen, if you go to trial and lose, you're facing 25 years to life. So you're only 35. If you go to trial and you lose, a jury has to give you 25 years. They can't give you less if they wanted to. The judge couldn't give you less if they wanted to, assuming the priors are proved up, and you rest your natural life. Now, the state today is offering you 2 years. And almost always, without fail, it's like, I don't want to do this. I've stood next to clients who are crying or about to start crying to take a plea deal, and I'm telling them, if you want to go to trial, let's go to trial. But it's hard to really try to convince somebody to try a case when they're 25 years to life, and they've been offered 2.
Now that brings up another question. I know what the law says, that you can enhance when someone's charged with something with prior convictions. But I have clients ask me this all the time. Isn't that double jeopardy? You're sitting here. I've already done my time. I've already been punished for that, and now you're going to punish me for it again. So I think this whole notion of 3 strikes you're out, or enhancing. One time I had a client in Galveston who was charged with felony theft, who had stolen like 2 deodorants and 2 soaps.
Yep.
Theft third, right?
From a drugstore, and he always charged with felony theft. I mean, I think that's another thing that we really need to address is, all the enhancements that we pile on people.
And unfortunately, the Supreme Court has not been kind on 8th Amendment violations for cruel and unusual punishment.
That's just not with enhancement.
No.
I mean, I had a case where a guy was charged with a felony theft, a natural felony theft, but his 2 priors were felony burglary of a motor vehicle, right? Well, in 96 or 94, 96, that became a misdemeanor. So he's now enhanced to 25 to life on this natural felony theft case with 2 cases that if he were charged 2 years later would have been misdemeanors.
Yeah, getting back to this pretrial intervention issue, and what we let off with. I mean, now basically, the DA's office is trying to enter into, and this just it's almost a retaliatory effect on the announcement of the marijuana policy last week. That now the Republicans are basically just going to not do what the Democratic DA wants to do, and they're not going to agree with it. They're not going to carry a case on the docket so that pretrial diversions can be done like they've historically been done in Harris County. And remember, the DWI pretrial intervention, when it was first introduced, there was a lot of questions about whether or not that was...
It was deferred in disguise.
Exactly. Was it a deferred in disguise, something that's not allowed under the law? And whether the DA's office was doing an in-run around that. Now, that kind of dissipated. Of course, that became an issue when Pat Likas was the DA. And, she wasn't the most popular DA amongst everybody. So then when Devin Anderson became DA, and she continued the program, all of a sudden...
Nothing. In fact, Devin Anderson did more pretrial interventions than Likas. I mean, Likas created the diversion program, but we saw through Devin Anderson, to her credit,
an expansion
of that, including first chance with possession of marijuanas, which was not met by any resistance from any judge.
Yeah, Brett Ligon wasn't saying, oh, Devin Anderson's first chance program is creating a sanctuary county for dope smokers. No. But a Democrat DA announces it, and all of a sudden we can't agree to get along on criminal justice reform, which it is what it is. It's politics. It's a little ridiculous. So now essentially this is the way I see it. The judges are these judges, the Republican judges who are not going to accept pretrial interventions. As I understand it, they're not going to agree to a transfer of the case.
Or recusal.
Or a recusal. So they're going to force the DA's office into a politically unpopular decision of having to dismiss cases on the front end. Dismissing DWIs. Dismissing drug cases on the front end. But reality is, that's the way it's done in over 90% of the counties in Texas.
Correct.
You get the dismissal on the front end, and if you don't adhere to the contract, then they refile.
And that's one of the proposals defense bar we made as well. Like, hey, listen, if the courts don't want to go with the way the agreements have gone before, which is carried for a year, then let's just dismiss on the front end.
Yeah.
Once again, we're talking about people who, almost all of them, are first chance people. And if you study the recidivism rate, if you study the chance of these people committing further crimes, it's extremely low. Most of these people enter into a pretrial intervention program and are successful and never come back. They never come back. And so these same people will complete a program. I don't think we have to worry so much about the refile.
Well, and the crazy thing too is, so I think I shared this with you, JV, at one point. I may have shared it on the show. I mean, I had a prostitution case up in McLennan County in Waco, and I never went to court. Never went to court. I filed my appearance letter.
To make sure you were the prostitute?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's my personal case. I moonlight up in Waco.
That's gross.
Hey, there's some weird stuff going on up in Waco.
Bikers need loving also.
Oh, that's disgusting.
We'll leave the Baylor football team out of things. But no, I mean, but I get this case. I file my notice of appearance with the court, copy the DA's office on it. You know what the DA's office does? They reach out to me. They say, we're going to send you all the discovery via email. Here it is. On the front, they say, return, acknowledging receipt. And also, here's our standard offer. But if you'd like to apply for the pretrial intervention, let us know. I write them back. I'd be interested. Let me know what to do. They put me in touch with the pretrial intervention coordinator. She said, okay, let's contact the court. Push off the court date for 2 months. We'll get all this done. You get it in. And I mean, I literally never went to court. I showed up in Waco one time with my client to sign the pretrial intervention agreement. We never even had to show up for they took care of filing the dismissal with the court.
Right.
And it, non-issue. I just had to show up in Waco in person to execute the documents with my client. We never went to court. We never did anything.
Which is the way it should be.
Which is the way it should be.
And one of the things, JV, you kind of mentioned this, one of the things that is also proposing is giving court chiefs more latitude to do creative ways of resolving cases. A case shouldn't have to always end with either a deferred or a time served or whatever. So if you have a situation like your guy who's 17 and is trespassing, and that's his only offense, then let the kid take not even 16 hours, that's a lot to me, like a 4-hour, don't trespass anymore class and be done with it and move on. I mean, what is this kid gonna do with trespassing except for have a charge on his record that will impede him in the future? So another proposal made was, hey, let's give back to felony court chiefs and misdemeanor court chiefs the power to make those kind of decisions without having to rely on a pretrial intervention or talk to their boss or boss's boss's boss or just say flat out, no, because I might get fired. I mean, I think, and once again, I want to make sure the public understands, this is not for those people who are always in trial, who are always in jail, who are always breaking the law. This is not for sexual offenders. This is not for murderers. We're talking about people who have a one-time mistake, which we all could have, and are simply asking to not have the rest of their life defined by this one-time mistake, and are willing to work to show that they are a better person, or they're not the person that's being charged, to move past it. These people are almost always successful, and the ones who are successful almost never repeat. No recidivism. So let's figure out other ways to not create another subclass of people in this country with criminal convictions.
How was DA Ogg receptive in the meeting? I mean, was she contributing? Was she just listening? Did she lay out any ideas of hers?
She wasn't actually in the meeting. It was her transition team, which is in charge of, we're going to put together a recommendation for DA Ogg, and she's going to decide on her own. She may bring in something from left field, or she may follow it, or she may go whatever, but it was nice to have people from the community who are not connected to criminal justice. And so that's probably your most unbiased opinion, in my opinion. I'm very biased for a defense. Obviously, the prosecutor was very biased for state. And we had people in the middle who were like, well, what's a pretrial intervention? And then we had to explain that. And then they form their opinion, they write their report. And that way, DA Ogg has the closest thing to an unbiased program of what a pretrial intervention should look like that the community itself wants and may accept.
Is the Chance marijuana program a pretrial intervention? Is that what you'd categorize it as?
No, actually, okay, so what I learned in this meeting is there's a difference between pretrial intervention and pretrial diversion.
What's the difference? I don't even know.
Okay, so if it's under a program like DWIs, if you're diverted to a program or a safe court for female prostitutes, then it's a pretrial diversion. But if the attorney themselves come up and say, hey, listen, I've got this guy with this unique situation, I want to put a packet together, I want to explain to you why we should get a pretrial intervention, then it's a pretrial intervention.
Huh.
I don't know if that's an actual real difference, but yeah, that's kind of...
Seems like a difference without a distinction in my book, but...
Now, a couple things that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Why is there the pushback from the judges on the marijuana? You say political reasons, but if you look at election results in Harris County over the last, half a dozen election cycles, how a judge does during an election has nothing to do with what that judge does on the bench. It all has to do with the letter that's after the name. Barack Obama carried the county twice. You had near sweeps, Democrats running as judges, knocking out Republicans. Didn't matter whether the Republican was a good judge or not. During the off-year elections, when you're headed by the state, you have the Republicans take control. And again, it doesn't matter how qualified the Democratic candidate is. If you're running in a year where the Republicans are not going to dominate the top of the ticket, the Republican judges are going to win, and it doesn't even matter. And so, this past year, Hillary Clinton carried Harris County. And if you take a look at the election results for the judges, you see a clean sweep, within a few percentage points of what she did. And so, using it as a political tool is not going to affect the judges whatsoever.
Well, but I agree with you to some extent. But here's the problem I see. The reality is the judges should be happy about this because what are the judges always concerned about and always telling everyone?
Size
The
of their
number of
docket.
cases on their docket.
Size of their docket.
Having to try another DWI.
Having to try
Right.
another DWI
So
case.
when you come out and do stuff like this, what I suspect, look, the Republicans got their ass handed to them in the election this year. Okay, I mean, and really, they thought they would recover this cycle. Okay, they thought they would take the county, and they didn't. They got their ass handed to them.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if, and we'll probably never get anybody to admit this, but I think it's, to borrow a phrase from our legal lexicon, circumstantial evidence suggests that this is probably a directive coming from the Harris County Republican Party itself, because if you start forcing them to dismiss DWI cases on the front end, who are you going to piss off? Matt.
Matt.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay? So you are now creating issues where she's dismissing cases on the front end and making the community less safe. Okay? You're creating the issue. I mean, you know, that's what they're trying to do. They don't give a... If they truly cared about their dockets, which I know they do, they'd be in favor of this. But there's something bigger going on here, in my opinion.
And you've also got that, you know, the off-year elections, you know, the party in power tends to do worse. And so maybe
That's right.
Maybe it's some way of trying to a rear guard action for what's going to end up happening in 2018.
Yeah.
What I've heard.
Everybody's mad about the Soros money and
Yeah.
everything else, and you know. So look, it's politics, though. Let's just call a spade a spade. It's politics.
What I've heard from just from the ear to the ground and the pulse regarding pushback from the marijuana chance program, going in line with what you were saying, Jimmy, is these officers now are upset, and maybe most of the R's are upset, or just anyone in general. I don't know. The pushback is that these officers who initially could arrest these people who they thought and kind of, in their opinions, knew that they were up to no good at night, they could arrest them for marijuana and get them off the streets. But now they can't do that. And so...
Well, they can.
Well, they could. They can.
There's nothing. It's just
They
they
can.
They can arrest them. They're just going to have to let them go when they get to the station.
Well, and that could be going back to
Travis County's
some of the
catch and release.
pushback.
Yeah.
You know, if that's the case, then that's absolutely ridiculous.
I agree.
And I agree with everything said here. What I disagree with you, Paul, on the one thing on the election cycle is I definitely believe there's a change in demographics in Harris County, Texas. Some of the elections in the previous for the judges were close, and some, like District Attorney Devin Anderson, were not close at all.
Yeah.
I mean, she got blown out the water, and that was a decisive vote against her for Kim Ogg. Now, it may have been decisive and say, we don't like you, Devin, so we don't care who's over here. We don't want you. We voted for this person. And it may have been, we really want Kim Ogg. That's who we're riding on. And so we don't care who's a sitting DA. We want Kim. I don't know. But Devin Anderson and the sheriff, whatever his name was.
Hickman.
Hickman. Sorry, Hickman.
That's funny.
Sheriff Rob.
He's the czar, not the sheriff.
Yeah, he's
That's right.
Sean.
Sorry, Hickman. They lost decidedly. And I refuse to believe that that's just in response to the whole jail and rape victim. I definitely believe that and the rest of the Republicans losing is a change in demographic. And I think that people as a whole are starting to see criminal justice less as punitive. Let's just put everybody in jail because that solves the problems. And people are starting to say, hey, we need more rehabilitative approaches for at least some of these people.
Well, the key is what the voter turnout in the city of Houston is. You know, because you get a high voter turnout in the city of Houston, the tide's going to go against the Republicans, and that is a demographic argument because of white flight.
Absolutely, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen in 2018. We will know for sure in this election cycle, in my opinion, whether the city has changed, whether it actually is becoming purple or blue, or whether it's just red, or whether it is just powerful presidential candidates driving those elections. I don't know, but my gut feeling, Jimmy, is that this is a response, one, to Kimog, and not just the first chance program, just into her in general.
Yeah.
To the firing of the 38 prosecutors, to the new program she's outlaid, that this is just a direct response to her. Like, you run that office, but we run this court.
That's right.
And we're going to do it our way. And I also believe that this may be a last hurrah.
You think so?
Now, Jay,
Wow.
my question for you. For years, we've joked that the judiciary in Harris County it's the judicial division of the Harris County District Attorney's Office. So how much of this blowback do you think has to do with the fact that, they're not necessarily marching in lockstep anymore?
I think it's a large part.
I think so. I mean, I think
Because now the criticism is the DA's office is stocked with former defense lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Who themselves were former prosecutors. So,
yeah.
it all comes back.
Yeah, I mean, the arguments are silly in a lot of this stuff, but we're at the halfway point of the show, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to open up the phone lines. 713-807-1794 is the number. Computer's on. Nothing on Twitter. At HCCLA_TV. Hit me up. Hit us up here. Get in the conversation. All right, next topic, guys. Our new sheriff. Cutting ties with ICE.
Right.
So we talked about all the detentions and the order with the Ninth Circuit and everything. But this is the first, our Harris County Sheriff, new Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, he's the first sheriff that I've seen has basically said, look, we're not going to aid ICE in rooting out people in our jail. It looks like it's a feel-good story, but he's just kind of moving people around.
Yeah, how'd you like the way
he's not kicking
What do you think?
He's not really kicking the ICE agents out.
Yeah.
So I mean, the news that's been out there might be just slightly misleading.
I will say, I did see him recently in Big Baker, and we gave each other, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? So he is down there, watching, patrolling, walking the jail beat, so to say.
And Big Baker is a jail.
Big Baker's a jail, right?
Jail.
Big Baker.
Not
But-
quite as air conditioned as Little Baker.
With Little Baker's great. You get your guy down there real quick. Takes forever in Big Baker. Maybe now that all these sheriff's deputies who are scanning potential detainees can get my client to my freaking holdover faster.
Yeah.
That's basically what he said. So what do you say, Paul?
Well, one, the job of the Harris County Sheriff is to, manage the jail, manages the sheriff's office, and to enforce the laws of the state of Texas. Immigration laws are not the purview of the state of Texas, not the purview of Harris County. It's not the Harris County Sheriff's job to sit and screen people as to whether they're here legally, or actually whether they're here with or without the permission of the federal government. I think the entire program should be scrapped. If the feds want to go in and spend their money and their time going jail to jail to jail throughout the country, be my guest. But it's not the job of the local sheriff to do the job the job of the federal immigration folks.
Got a phone call coming in here. Kicking off early tonight, so let's get in on it here. Hello, thanks for calling Reasonable Doubt.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
This is my first time watching your program.
Oh, great. Glad you're tuning in.
Okay, I got you could call it a three-part question.
Okay.
You'll get a three-part answer.
Okay,
4.
first part is, the whole thing deals with the mother of my kids. Okay? Back in Illinois of 94, she was convicted of crime. Now, here in Texas, right now she's serving time in Gatesville for so-called assault on a police officer, that the police officer came into the house without any kind of just cause, no warrant or anything. And because she was drunk, she pulled a butter knife.
All right.
Okay? Now, my third question
Wait, what was the
to
second
all
part?
you lawyers there. Do you know the prosecutor and the judges before you go into court?
I think the before I even ask my clients what the facts were, what your situation is, there's two questions I ask. What court are you in, and who's the DA? Because that will dictate how, at least I, will proceed in your case. Those are the first two questions I ask. And in the event that I don't know the judge or I don't know the DA, I put together a team to find out who they are and how I can get to know them. To answer your second question, a butter knife in the state of Texas, it can be considered a deadly weapon. To answer your first question,
Especially if you're soft butter.
to answer your first question, convictions from out of state will follow you straight to Texas. So, first two questions, not did you do it, did you not do it, what happened, who's the judge, who's the DA. Going back to the sheriff, though.
Yeah.
So,
Glad you handled that you've handled that three-part question like a
champ.
pro.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Knocked it out, man.
1, 2, 3.
I'm president.
From what I understand, there's an agreement that a sheriff's office can opt into where they can tell the government, hey, federal government, we're going to use our manpower and our resources to screen individuals who are potentially deportable who are coming into our jails. And in return...
And they get federal funding for that?
Yes, and in return, the sheriff's office receives money from the federal government. What I understand our sheriff has done has canceled this agreement and opted out and said all these sheriff's deputies who are screening people that are coming in, I'm going to take those people off and put them on the beat. I'm going to take these people off and make them focus on booking. I'm going to take these people off and get them to the holdover sooner and put them in positions where they can be more effective in exercising our goals and a more efficient use of our resources. However, if you want to send your ICE agents down to the jail and do it yourself, you're more than welcome to.
That's what I was going to get at. And to kind of answer your original statement, Jimmy, I personally think that this is a great gesture, but it's not. It's just a gesture.
The old toothless tiger, as we call it.
Right. I mean, we're talking about the sheriff, and I appreciate the gesture. He moved 12 deputies from a dedicated screening to whatever else serves the community, and that's great. I definitely agree with Paul in that deputies should protect Harris County and not enforce federal laws. We spend a lot of money in taxes for different federal agencies to have different federal manpower, and if they want to come and enforce federal laws, let them do it. But if I'm going to pay my county taxes, which are a lot, I want my sheriffs protecting me and not looking for somebody to deport. That being said, they're still going to receive the funds. They're still going to have ICE agents in the jail. One of the things I'm curious about is, and I've never quite understood this, when they say they're screening people, what does that really entail? I mean, are they going to people who don't speak English and saying, are you a citizen? Or are they going to Hispanic people and saying, show me your green card? And what else does it mean by screening? Most people, when they get arrested, even if they are not from the United States, don't travel with their immigration documents. I mean, you don't travel with your I-9 or whatever documents that may be to show your legal status.
Well, my guess is
how
if you're out committing some illegal activity, you're probably not carrying much identifying information, period, but...
Just makes sense. And then are they screening people that look like Paul and Jimmy? Like, if you show up in the Harris County Jail, they're going to spend 5 minutes talking to you saying you're redheaded. Are you Irish? Are you from Ireland? You know, and your last name is Ardoin. That's French. Are you from France? Show me your paper, quick, right now. Let me see your visa, and then to go to JV and be like, hey, man, you're obviously Mexican. I mean,
Get out of here.
I don't know if you're actually
hablo.
Mexican. You're Latin, but I'm just gonna say you're Mexican. You could be Colombian, but that's like Mexican. You know, I think the only real safe person is me, right?
I'm just gonna give him some crawfish and sound Cajun. Truth, you know.
Mon cher.
That's right.
What it is it's vetting. It's extreme vetting. It's the best vetters. It is the greatest vetters. That's what it is. And so
It could be any vetter.
That's what I was gonna say. Any vet.
Yeah, huge vetters. The best vetters you've ever seen.
Is it the so-called vetters?
No, but you know
Are
what?
they fake vetters?
They are the fake vetters, and this is why I'm concerned about. as it currently stood, you had sheriff deputies who were vetting people as they walked in. And there was really no way to tell if one person's going to get screened and put the ice hold and the other person's not going to get screened and put the ice hold. I have had clients who should have been got an ice hold in 2.5 seconds,
Right.
but for whatever reason they squeaked through, and the dude who didn't deserve the ice hold, he got wrapped up, fake license plate, things like he bought a car at a used car dealership and the plate turned out to be altered in some way. Ice hold. The predictability of who was going to get the ice hold and who was not going to get the ice hold was zero. You couldn't tell.
And I'm willing to bet they're almost always Latin American.
Oh, always,
In some
always.
Hispanic way.
Maybe the worst I ever had a client from up in Dallas, was arrested in Harris County, charged with sexual abuse of a child. It wasn't him. We had the evidence that it was not. He was nowhere in the area when it happened. So we got it clear. We got the case in Harris County dropped. Unfortunately, he was not here with the permission of the United States government. There was an ICE hold on him that was placed on him because he was arrested wrongly in the first place. And so even though I could tell his family, we got the case thrown out,
He's still in jail.
he still got sent back.
Well, and that's partially the concern, is that now you're going to have real vetters coming in, not people who took the weekend course with the ICE agents to determine this Guatemalan versus this Honduran versus this Mexican get ICE holds. You're going to get ICE agents here who take their job very seriously, who get paid decent enough, who will be putting holds on everybody, so to say. Maybe, I don't know. But the whole idea of the whole predictability, you may get out, you may not get out with an ICE hold, I think everybody now is getting an ICE hold. It's going to happen now.
And I want to say something kind of devil's advocate. I'm not opposed to ICE screening people arrested for crimes for legal status. I'm not opposed to that at all. I mean, certainly if here legally, not legally, whatever, you shouldn't break the law if you are breaking the law. If innocent, I get that when I'm talking about that caliber of people. But I'm not opposed to it. I'm opposed to using county dollars for it. And I'm opposed to any kind of bias screening of it to where it doesn't apply to all, just to the people that the screener thinks might be illegal, which under the prevailing thought is going to apply to Hispanic people and Muslim people. If you look like you're from any Muslim country, you're going to be screened. And if you look Hispanic, you're going to be screened. If you look black or white, you're going to be fine. Maybe if you look Chinese or Asian with some kind of an accent, you might get screened. And I'm opposed to any kind of bias discrimination of people. I really am. And I think another unintended side effect is if this starts happening like that, then victims of crimes may not report it. You know, people who might, like if I'm in a relationship and I'm a woman or I'm a man and my wife is constantly beating the crap out of me, but I don't want to see her deported, I may not report it because I fear the cops might do more than what I want. You know, I didn't ask you to take my wife away from me, forever. Just have her stop beating me up, please.
Well,
or something like that.
And what's going to happen is they're going to deport you, her, and you.
Right.
I had a scenario where you had a guy who was a victim of theft call in and say, hey, my stuff's getting stolen. When the cops arrived, they arrested both of them. I mean, and then my guy's in ICE custody, and the other guy's fighting his case, and nobody wins. And that's exactly the scenario.
I think that's the real danger here is you will have a community of people who are not getting justice and will be victimized more by other people. And let's step out of that. If I know for a fact you won't call the cops on me because you're afraid of the police officers, then anybody will come and make you a victim of some other stuff, financial crimes, whatever. So I think the police, immigration is important.
Yeah, but see, I mean, here's the falsity in that, is everybody's all up in arms, ICE raids. I can't believe this is Gestapo tactics. This crap's been going on for years.
Absolutely.
This isn't new.
Absolutely.
This is not new. I'm sorry. It's just not. I'm not going to sit here and say that detaining people at airports is not new, because that is. Okay, I agree with that. But Look, people have always threatened to report, I'm going to turn you into ICE.
Absolutely.
You don't do what I
And-
mean, how often have you heard stories about restaurant owners threatening their employees, and then the tide finally turned when the employees finally figured out, like, hey, we can go report the employees and get them tagged for harboring. But I mean, that stuff has been going on for years. I mean, the migrant workers in the fields, fleeing when the plane is flying overhead.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common joke, yeah.
And let's not forget
been
that
going on for years.
Obama was the deporter in chief.
Right.
Yeah, he deported a lot. But
Of the almost 70,000 federal cases filed last year in the country, how many do you think were immigration-based prosecutions?
federal, I'd
Yeah.
probably say at least 60. I mean, I don't know. I don't do federal law. but
20,000.
a lot.
Almost one-third.
So a third of them were.
Third of them were immigration-based prosecutions.
It doesn't surprise me. But the idea here is and maybe I'm wrong. Immigration doesn't affect me like it does somebody who actually has immigrants in a family. But what it appears to me is not that it's happening, but there appears to be an uptick in everything that's going on. Like it's just everywhere now. Before we all were aware of immigration, with people being deported, and most of us probably have a problem with certain people being deported. But now we're seeing, maybe it's just the media in retaliation against Trump. It feels like every time I turn on the TV, I'm hearing about more and more and more and more immigration raids that I didn't hear about before.
Yeah.
And people being targeted, like JV's client, that I never heard about. It doesn't make sense to me to target a person who's a victim of a crime.
And I don't think anyone checked Christopher Columbus's papers. I don't think anyone checked the Pilgrim's papers for that. And I read something today that out in Pasadena Municipal Court, they had ICE agents there, and if somebody had criminal background, they were running them, and if they were not here with the permission of the government, they were taking them into custody.
At a municipal
The
court.
question is,
Pasadena Municipal
how
Court.
do you know? Unless there's an actual, and I'm curious, I really am curious about this. Unless there's an actual ICE hold already in place, just kind of floating like a warrant out for your arrest, and you don't know about it until you get arrested, how does any officer know on the spot right then and there who's an immigrant, who's here legally or not? Because people don't carry the papers.
Hasn't it that?
really curious
I
about.
think the bouncers at the gas lamp, they had the different shades of skin. I think that's what the ICE agents are using.
Legal, not legal.
Right? Yeah, they're like legal, not legal. And they're like, No, but yeah, what Paul was saying is a news flash, and Jimmy predicted it a week or two ago. ICE is showing up, and they're at the municipal courts.
And they're also going to be, go report to your probation officer. You're doing
Yes.
doing everything you're supposed to be doing. I've got a client that I've told him, it's like, look, if you take probation on this case, every time you go to your probation officer, you better assume that you're not coming back.
They are.
I'd like to say I'm Nostradamus, but this was a pretty easy one to see coming.
Well, but
It really was.
Yeah, news flash. They are picking up
Nostradamus is
people
a foreigner, too.
at your probation meeting. You go to your probation meeting, they're picking you up. News flash. It's happening right now. You get a traffic ticket, you go to municipal court, they're picking people up right now.
Which once again, and for devil's advocate purposes, honestly, some people should be deported. I'm not going to say everybody should. I'm not going to make the argument. And certainly those with criminal cases have the highest you should be deported rate than those who are just living their life. I think I'm of the mindset that if you're here legally, not legally, if you're just living your life and you're working and taking care of your family, stay. If you're being productive, stay. But certainly if you are being counterproductive, then you run the risk of being deported. I'm not opposed to that.
But then there comes this issue. You've got a couple different categories. You've got some folks who were brought over by their parents when they were young. Kid didn't choose to come here. They were brought here with their parents. They grew up here. They get into trouble. Now you're going to deport them. Their entire family is here.
Right.
Where are you going to send them? A situation. You're born here, you're a citizen. Mom and dad, not here legally. The children are here legally. You're going to deport mom and dad? What are you going to do with the kids?
I feel bad about those kids who are brought over as kids, and now they're 17, 18, and they get caught with marijuana. Mm-hmm. And granted, there's an exception. For example, I have an individual where, in the past, where he thought he was doing the right thing. He represented himself. The government on the first day offered a reduction to paraphernalia. And he thought, great, sure, paraphernalia. Turns out, paraphernalia is worse than marijuana, and now he's in removal proceedings.
Wow.
He had no idea. The guy was brought over as a kid. He had no, and you know, some 17-year-olds smoke weed. Not all of them, but a lot of them, and they don't know that you could. Where are you going to send you to Honduras? You've never been to Honduras. They're going to, you know, kill you out there. You don't even speak Spanish, man. You know, I mean.
I definitely think more than anything, what is needed for immigration is a reform, a real base reform, and not like most things. I don't think it should be black or white. You should have leeway. People should have the ability to construct reasonable solutions to problems, because not every case is the same. And how this shakes out, there needs to be immigration reform. There needs to be something that's representative of what's going on, to include situations like this and situations you brought up, to where we aren't deporting families, Paul, and we're not separating kids from parents or forcing parents to make an impossible decision of leaving their kids in the States and going home, or going back to their country of origin, or children who are brought here, I'm not saying against their will, but who are brought here at a young age, who are American, who are just American as everybody else, and now forced to try to learn a culture they don't understand, don't know, and a language they don't speak. That's dangerous. And I think there needs to be immigration reform before we start doing this mass enforcement. Even Obama should have done this, and I'm mad he didn't.
Thanks, Obama.
I don't think we're going to get reform. I think we're just going to get enforcement.
Well, you know that the justice system shouldn't punish people for who they are. It should punish people for what they do.
That's profound.
It's deep thoughts.
Deep.
It's in the next article.
It's on the next show.
All right, I want to talk about this case up in Dallas.
Dwayne Bug.
No.
Oh, the doctor.
The doctor.
The Dr. Death.
I want to talk about this case. We don't have too much time left, but I want to talk about this. I wanted to get into Buck, but we've been rambling on and talking about butter knives and stuff. But this doctor up in Dallas, Christopher
We can
Dunch.
mention Buck briefly and say that finally the Supreme Court has said being black is not inherently dangerous.
Right.
Except for Clarence.
Thank you.
Hey, dude, how pissed off? I want to ask the black community out there, how pissed off are you about Clarence Thomas?
You can't be pissed off at Clarence for being Clarence. Just to let you know.
I am pissed off at you,
But,
Mr. Thomas.
I don't want to interrupt you, but finally
no.
I have something else I can finally say. Hey guys, being black isn't inherently dangerous anymore. Right. So please stop profiling me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not inherently
They
dangerous.
finally ruled in favor. This
Thank you, Clarence Thomas.
Yeah,
right.
F you, Clarence. You're Uncle Tom. Am I on TV? Is this live? Is this live? Yeah.
Go from profound thoughts to that.
The quote of we should not punish people for who they are, but for what they do is out of the dissent in that case.
No, I know. All right, I want to get to this neurosurgeon in Dallas.
All right.
Christopher Dunch. He was convicted of felony injury to an elderly person. And they sentenced him to life. Mm-hmm. Now, the facts of this case, obviously I didn't hear all of the evidence. I'm just getting, what's been reported. But he improperly placed screws and plates in patients' spines, left a sponge in another patient. And some of these people died. Some of these people were severely maimed. And I'm sorry, but correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like medical malpractice.
When I read the article today, I looked at the statute.
Yeah.
And I saw criminal negligence. Criminal negligence is, like if I give a gun to a deranged person, and they go shoot somebody, I gave them a gun with the substantial knowledge that they could go do something crazy. I think this case is a direct result of tort reform in Texas.
Yeah.
When you sit there,
That's what I was thinking.
When you cap malpractice damages, when you make it harder to get in the courtroom, the insurance companies were happy, but now, in the old days, this guy would have been uninsurable a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But because the insurance company can go in and figure out what they're capped at, they're willing to take the risk on it. And we are criminalizing
Being a crappy doctor.
Yeah, and if we want to talk about criminal negligence, what about the state? With all these complaints against this doctor, why didn't the state do anything? There's a licensing.
Why didn't they take his license?
There's a licensing board. They could have taken this guy's license, but they chose not to do so. I mean, maybe they're understaffed. They didn't know, but somebody knew. And if you had allowed people to sue, as you could in the old days, for medical malpractice, this would never have happened because this doctor would never have gotten as far as he did.
Right.
And Paul, I think what you said was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to disagree with the idea that he should not have been prosecuted. I think he should have been prosecuted. Absolutely.
For an intentionally and knowingly?
Because for negligence, absolutely.
But
Criminal negligence is different than simple negligence.
And they got it for intentional and knowingly. That was 5 to life.
I get it.
Well, the statute says you can be criminally negligent.
But he's held to the standard of a neurosurgeon, which is one of the top. I'm not to diminish any other form of medicine, but it ain't podiatry. So, it's one of the top, if not the top form. And this guy, you read what he did, and it felt like he was operating at maybe he was drunk. It's to make a mistake, to err is human, and unfortunately, you don't want to be that person to receive that error. I get you. But the repeated amount of errors this guy's had, you listed 3, but there are more than 3.
Yeah.
There was a lot more than 3.
There were.
And some of these people, all of them had a severe life-changing event. We're not talking about operating on a foot, you lose a toe. You make a mistake on a spine and you're paralyzed.
And their family's been able to sue like they could have before tort reform. This doctor would have been out of business a long time ago.
Honestly, I agree with you, Paul. I think if tort reform were the case, he would have been out and lives would have been saved. However, I would still say that let's say on the off chance tort reform was out and they sued and got money and he was still operating, I would still say he should be prosecuted. Now, I think this is a life case. I will give you that. This is not a life case. But this is definitely a man who should go to jail. This is definitely a man who understood what he was doing and that people
Apparently
were coming
not.
to him. Well, he didn't know the law of medicine, but he understood people were coming to him seeking his medical expertise and were literally putting their health and bodies in his hands. And he either was willfully ignorant, intentionally bad, or negligent in his job, and he should have become a different doctor.
This could have been willfully blind.
Yeah.
I think that people deserve to have him put in prison. This man is dangerous, and I think he got his sentence is too high. This is not a life case. It wasn't even like a 10-year case, but he definitely deserves to spend some time in jail.
On life, he has to serve at least 35 years. Is that right? I think that's right. At least 35. That guy's gonna die in prison.
Yeah, he's 44.
That guy. I mean, a neurosurgeon going to prison. Seriously, bro? You're gonna be sitting next to Hyman, Jose.
Don't know how to shank him.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be all
Without just
man.
He's not going to be the prison doctor.
Jeez.
He'll know exactly what to do, or maybe not.
They're not going to let him in the medical unit.
God, we're all defense lawyers. We have no soul.
I know.
No.
We have 0. We got 30 seconds left. Great to have you guys back on the show.
It was great to be back.
Would have liked to debate this a little more, but interesting stuff tonight.
We could always do the after show on YouTube.
We can. I got a live video camera right
We
here.
can jump into how it's okay to be black again. It's not dangerous anymore. Thank you, Supreme Court.
They haven't ruled that for you, Julio.
Oh, I know. God, man. No, hey.
You're next.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for tonight. Good night. We'll see you next week for another episode of Reasonable Doubt. Bye.
Peace.